A client recently came to us and said, I'm looking to really dial in my brand messaging. I am rebranding my website. I want to make sure my story, my mission, and my brand, my website are all spot on in order to attract the people who I would love to work with. I want to apply more concern and empathy into my sales process. Well, when they said that, they were entering into our story supply messaging framework. It's a workshop series and guide that helps you clarify your brand messaging so you know how to talk about what you do and why in the most powerful way. So what I want to show you today are 5 essentials you need inside of your brand messaging in order for you to stand out and profit and for your customers to feel seen and heard. There's a video I did above that talks about them even further. And what we're going to do today is actually show you a real life example of a coaching session we did with one of our clients to help them break down each of these 5 essentials, but then use that to guide their next marketing decisions. In this specific instance, we were going to apply it to parts of the marketing plan, but then how we scripted their sales messages in video. And so as you watch this coaching call, take note for yourself to be like, okay, I may not be in the industry of this type of business. However, I can apply the same principles and take the same approach to how I go to better clarify the words I use in my messaging, to on my website, to on in my videos, any piece of marketing material. And then you can go off and further have confidence in how to approach your marketing.
This is a messaging workshop. Plus, we're going to do a quick review of the launch plan. And so I'll guide the conversation, but this is really going to be a lot of note taking and just making sure we're refining your messaging. Because at the end of this, the goal is to really take these notes and put that into the marketing messages we help script and prepare for you, but also some updates that can go inside of your website, your sales page, and even social media. We're going to start with talking about just a quick product market fit, which basically just means to understand the type of industry we're speaking to. There's kind of 3 different levels of markets. So the broad range market are relationships. Other markets, for example, it's like health and wealth, but relationships is the market we're in. So within that, there's like a sub-market. Parent-child relationships is that kind of sub-market within relationships that we're addressing. You can kind of expand this a little bit more, but calling it your niche, would you say, is it primarily toddler to parent relationships, toddler relationships? Well, what does that look like, you would say, for your niche?
Yeah, I would say parenting, toddlers and preschoolers. Yeah, I don't even know if I would say relationships is the market, because I guess when I hear that, I hear like couples counseling, I hear Gottman and Gottman, I hear marriage, I hear spouses. Whereas I really feel like our discussion is around parenting and supporting the parent-child relationship, which I know we say that, but that is really that's part of parenting language.
Parenting, so parent-child.
And then toddlers and preschoolers. So our whole demographic is parents of children between the ages of 1 and 5.
Ages 1 and 5, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, the parents and your ideal customers, describe them and feel free, like this is all just like free flowing, whatever you guys want to say. Tell us more about who your ideal person is, your ideal parent is, what keeps them up at night, what annoys them, what type of person are they, and just kind of describe their ultimate profile of what it looks like.
Do you girls want to take that, or do you want me to?
I mean, you could take it
way.
from your experience, from like your professional experience, and then I can tell you, like, I'm the exact demographic that someone would buy this course because of how hard it is. It's how hard it is to become a toddler parent. Like, you stay up at night because it feels so hard during the day, and it just feels like it's like a constant failure after failure, and you don't know how to connect with your child. You don't know how to talk to them in a way that they can understand what you're saying, and you lose your patience, and you see these patterns that come up in your own like triggers in your own behaviors, and you don't want to be that way, because it's just so hard. Every day it just feels so hard, and you don't even know if you're doing it right. Like, you don't know if what you're saying is working or not.
And you really just want to show up for your children. Like, you're so motivated to be what your parents weren't for you, to support them in a way, and you don't want to mess them up. and make them, have to go through what you went through.
I would also say it's parents who are having a challenge with their child's big feelings, with their child's difficult emotions, with the child's challenging behaviors. Parents who don't understand why their child is doing what they're doing. And as a result, the parent feels that they are messing up. They are the problem. And I think Veronica and Sonnet are also tapping into the importance of it bringing up things from our own experiences of being a child and our own experiences of being a parent. So a lot of parents who come to me to work with me will say, why, I don't understand why spanking doesn't work. And I don't really believe that an attuned and gentle approach with a child could produce a respectful, wonderful child afterward. I just think that child would be spoiled or would be entitled. So parents who I think are really wanting to raise wonderful children, but have a lot of mixed messages around how to do that.
Especially because you have your parenting partner who says the discipline means consequences. Like they need to be disciplined. They need to have consequences for their actions. And, like parents like us are like dipping into the fields of like trying to do it differently, but we don't have like a concrete or we don't feel confident in our abilities or have the tools to actually implement and to follow through with doing something differently, because you also have to get your partner on board and you have to hold that new ground for you, but you don't have the tools to do so.
Yeah, I think the partner on board is a good thing to bring up in like getting on the same page with your partner, or, finding a common ground to parent from. So this course will help partners, if the client is also feeling like, we just need to find a way to do this together.
I can also say, just from the demographic of parents that I work with, they're extremely stressed. They are so stressed out. They are stressed out by everything in their life. And the children just add an additional source of stress, and having to parent the children in a way that society is saying is the quote best way to parent the child is really draining for parents. So we've been pushing up against a lot of what we call helicopter parenting, where parents feel like they have to schedule their child. They have to schedule everything. They have to be involved in all of these important activities so that they can go to Harvard. They have to go to the best preschool so that the child is prepared for, the realities of life. This is how parents are made to believe that they have to raise their child when they're 3 years old. And this causes so much unnecessary stress for parents, when really our message is quite simple. Our message is, hey, focus on regulating yourself. Learn the tools of self-regulation. So the flip side of that is many parents that I work with don't actually have self-regulation tools. Learn the tools of self-regulation and teach your child how to regulate their bodies. And from there, we will have more peace in the home. We will have less chaos. We can kind of minimize the noise of everything that's going around us. So that's also, I think, an important part of the demographic. They are stressed, they're overwhelmed, they constantly feel like they're failing. I know I'm just like repeating some things, but that's okay.
Oh, you're fine.
Stressed, overwhelmed, constantly feel like they're failing, fearful that their child is going to be an entitled brat and spoiled. Fearful also, parents feel very fearful that they don't have control of the child and they don't have control of their home. So parents get very testy and feel very strongly when they believe that their child is walking all over them. I hear it all the time. I just want to have control in my home. Mm-hmm. And I remind them, we're not in control, we're in charge. And we have to switch our mindset.
I want to address let me write this out fast. We're not in control, we're in charge. One thing you addressed, which is really powerful and from the messaging standpoint, and I didn't put it in language yet, but is identifying what societal norms are and then introducing the new way to think about and to break, existing beliefs and myths, to take a stand for like, society teaches you this, but this is the correct way. So taking a stand against what society teaches.
Yeah.
Like, what would you say are those main societal norms and myths that
society teaches you that children are to be submissive and are not equal to parents. Society teaches you that in order to raise respectful, kind children, that you need to beat them, yell at them, threaten them, punish them, give them consequences, break their will. That is what society teaches you about the child-parent relationship, breaking the child's spirit, really. If a child is testing your boundary, it's because they're manipulative. This is another thing that society says. It's because the child is manipulating you, even though the research is incredibly clear that children don't even have the brain structures capable for manipulation until they're about 7 years old.
And then you break their will.
and then you break them in half.
That's why when this course stops at 5.
Like, yeah, that's why we're like, all right, let's get to 7.
Yeah. You don't want to deal with that. Just we'll break at 5, and then you guys
handle it from there.
We don't want to get sued after that.
Another one.
Yeah.
You shouldn't speak respectfully to a child because that will make them soft. Noticing and responding to a child's emotions is not what the world does. So you shouldn't do that because that will make them soft.
Yeah. Or if you give in and you give them attention, then you're just going to spoil them.
Like you treat boys versus how you treat girls too. Yeah. There's a lot of different social norms around what is okay to do there. Like you want to raise a strong boy and you want to raise a nice girl.
And also that if they have big feelings or if they misbehave, then they are to be put in isolation and they have to like think about what they've done, even though they have no idea why they just did it.
Or figure it out on their own.
And it's because they're bad, because kids act bad. And our job as parents is to, make them act good. So it really is about being in control of the child, but we are supporting and furthering the conversation around a more conscious approach to raising children. That actually there's quite a bit that they can teach us. And our job is to listen and to support, not to always be controlling. Because the truth is that control is an illusion. You're not in control. These are human beings with intentions and their own lives to live. That's another thing I would say. Society does not look at children like they are human beings. They look at them like they are possessions. Even in the way we talk about them, my child, right? We talk about them in a possessive way. Now, I'm not going to go that far and say we can't call them my child. They do, but like we have to kind of expand this idea around who do they belong to? Well, they belong to themselves first, and we're supporting that.
And then what happens when you take possession of them is that you place your ability or your how well you are as a parent into how they act. So like everything that they do is all of a sudden now tied to their behavior and your worth as a parent. So if they act like a good kid, then you're like, I'm a great parent. If they act like a bad kid, then I'm a bad parent.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. A child's worth is tied to their behavior. And the main crux of this entire teaching that we're doing is going beyond the behaviors and seeing and responding to needs. I actually hear parents say, I don't think my kid needs anything. I gave them food. What do they need? They just need attention. That's another one. Yeah. They just need attention. We have to flip that narrative. Actually, what they're needing is connection. And this is a human need that we all have. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's that being disconnected is deadly.
Woo, you guys are preaching.
I know.
Keep going. Okay, so let's kind of put a quick bow on just this section alone. You've already been hitting on some of these other pieces, and some of these we just swiped from your sales page. website. But really what we're hitting on is like, what is the overall narrative or story that we're taking your customers through? So the more clearly you can understand them, which obviously you do, and what they want. So they want to raise a wonderful child, but I have mixed messages. So like raising a wonderful child, what are some other dreams that like deep down in their soul, what is it that they want?
They want peace. They want joy. They
peace
want
in their home.
In their home. Peace, joy in their home. They want to feel like they're successful with all the messiness and the chaos of having children. We are not sending the message that you're going to have perfect home. We're sending the message you can manage it, even when it's hard.
And I think they want children that are going to be successful in the world. Like they're going to do such a great job raising their children that when they go out into the world, they know that they can survive and they'll have, be resilient and be empathetic and be citizens of society.
I also think that they really want to feel connected to their children. When I really get into it in my assessment with parents and children, practically every parent who ends up coming to me for a child with behavioral issues will say, what I really want is to better understand my child and to know how to help them. I don't know how to help my child. And I think that is the dream of every parent. Every parent wants to know how to be the best source of support that they can possibly be for their child, knowing that I'm not going to do it perfect. I'm going to make mistakes along the way. But boy, I just want to do the best that I can for this child. That is what I really think the vast majority of parents want. We're hitting it in the first 5 years because we know from a research perspective, 90% of the brain is developed by the time we're 5. We know from the attachment literature that how we attach to people, if we learn a sense of security or insecurity or avoidance or whatever, is in our body. It's in our central nervous system by the time we're 12 months old. And we also know from the literature that the more a parent can regulate and reflect, the better outcome this child has for the rest of their lives.
Including the teenage years. Everyone says that, we just wait for the teenage years, but this whole working with them as when they're toddlers, this is like a big transition like the teenage years. So we're really focusing on prevention and keeping that connection. So when they do want, get introduced with all those wild hormones, that they have a sense of regulation and a sense of connection to you, and they won't necessarily like do things behind your back like I did,
They'll also have the tools,
100%.
like you're giving them the tools now so we're giving them the building blocks and the tools through this program during these young years so that when they hit those ages.
This is why we use the word relationship, Dallin, because what we are training and teaching we're giving the foundation of a relationship in these early years that even though it will shift and change as the children get older and more independent, this will be the foundation that has been learned between this particular child and this particular parent. It is what that child will fall back on when they do want to be, an explorative and curious teen and experiment with things and do the typical teenage things. What my friend, most of my friends are like, 20, 30, 40 years older than me. What we did exactly the same thing as you're doing with your child. And what we are learning is it did make a difference. We did have more peace. We did have more calm in the teenage years. The parents who are focusing on getting their children to sleep through the night, the parents who are focused on how their child was eating and was obsessed with that, or getting their children into X, Y, and Z activities. Those parents had less joy, felt more stress, and were more disconnected from their teenagers. So while we're not necessarily speaking to teenage parents, we know from research and anecdotal evidence that this is the way to having those types of healthy relationships that we desire.
That's so good. So problems, I feel like we've covered that. We can kind of translate some of these pieces down here. Perspective, I do want to address this real quick, and we'll expand on a few additional ideas, but what is the one belief that these parents need to develop in order to feel confident that the raising children you like system is what they need to be a more successful parent and deepen that relationship with their children? In order for someone to buy into raising children you like in this system, they need to believe something. So they need to believe, hey, I can be successful with, like, and it's kind of just recrafting some of the language, but it's like, I can be a successful, more loving parent when we can say maybe like implement the raising children you like system, but it's more of like an inner belief, right? Like you referenced some options up here we can kind of look at. When I believe that I'm not in control, but I'm in charge, or when I believe that in order to raise like more successful children or children we like, I need to do this. It's, like, what is that unique belief that breaks societal norms and myths that helps you guys stand out? What makes you different?
There's so many. I'm trying to kind of just distill it down to something more overarching, because I feel like the needs would be a good one. Like when I can understand my child's needs, like I will see a shift in their behavior, or I'll understand how to support them better through all their years. But it feels like if you don't know what child's needs are, I'm not sure that's strong enough. But
yeah, it's like, well, when I understand the underlying reason for my child's behavior, then I'll be able to teach them about their own emotions, which will make them resilient people.
Maybe it has to do with their thought and emotions. Like when I can understand I have the power in me, like it's giving that self-confidence as a parent.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. How do we promote the good parent? I can be a good parent by centering love and connection and listening.
The idea that you were saying, like parents feel that they're the ones to blame, so it's like reversing that. When I understand that, like it's not my fault.
I'm trying to use is the start of the sentence I can be. Is that
not necessarily? I would speak to, like, deep down, it's kind of the part of that dream element, right? Where it's like I believe I can raise wonderful children who are successful, feel loved and connected.
I can raise loving and respectful children without hitting, yelling.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Without hitting and yelling.
Hitting, yelling, and listening to what society tells me is the right way, or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
I can speak for myself as a parent too, who has a 4-year-old. I can believe I can raise wonderful children who feel loved and respected, and so there's some continuation there.
I believe I can raise wonderful children who feel love and connected without me feeling
like a failure.
Over. Yeah, without me feeling like a failure, or without me feeling taken advantage of.
Right. Oh yeah, we used to use, like, without them, like running the roost or something, which obviously we can say in a different way, but like we can support our child in this way without them being.
Because that truly, this perspective plays on societal's ideas as well as big fears. People have big fears that their children are going to run the show. And that's very scary for parents.
Good. Okay. So let's keep going with this. There's a few other things I want to address in the next 20 minutes. Big fears that children
will run the show.
So the plan that's already kind of built in, the raising children you like system. One thing I want to kind of address real quick is adjusting the language. On the website, it's the online course system is what's used. But I think coming from a parent's perspective, the system and online course is a less attractive way of saying something that I want to join and be a part of. Experimenting with words that will connect with your ideal customer could be like transformative learning experience, something that draws you in a little bit more. And
Can it be called that? Can it be called transformative learning experience? Because that's awesome.
That's huge, right? It's speaking to the transformation they can have as a parent, but also the transformation they can bring their child. But then it's a learning experience versus like, oh, a system.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay.
It'll be so much easier for me to sell this with my swipe up, right?
Yeah.
Like, come join this learning experience,
Yeah.
as opposed to sign up for my online course, guys,
Yeah.
which nobody wants to sign up for. But if it's a learning experience, not yet. Don't worry. we're almost at 10,000. We're getting there.
Yay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, completely. And that's it. Like, it's all thinking about like, what is like, you're inviting them into a story that's about them. And that's one thing to always remember. So there's that plan there. Payoff. Those are those outcomes. You guys already like hit on so many so well. Like you mentioned a few here, minimize tantrums. It goes even beyond that though. So we kind of swiped those. And then the ones up here with the dream, we can bring down here to pay off. Other pieces, just so you know what it's going to be used for. So the problem, solution, and payoff, which is basically what we're swiping from above. We want to narrow down on like, what is that one problem? What is that one solution? And what is that one payoff? Obviously, there's so many examples, but like if we can sum up these 20 problems into one problem, that can be most powerful, because then what that can translate into is your one message statement. So that's like one to two sentences. How can you talk about what you do and why in a powerful way that attracts your perfect customer? Oftentimes what people are going to say, it's like, hey, what does your company do? Like, what do you guys sell? What are you going to do? You're like, oh, it's an online course for parents to be, better parents to their children. And people are like, oh, that's nice. But how can you use language that helps you stand out? That's like, oh my gosh, like, tell me more, like this is for me, or I know someone who this is for. And so that's kind of where that power comes in, with giving the clarity of more of a power statement in your Instagram stories or in your marketing messages, anywhere, it can show up and it stands out to people. Belief statements. So this is a big one. It kind of addresses what we started talking about before with perspective, but having just a series of belief statements that's like shows what you're taking a stand for. We're against societal norms. We're against what like the myths of the media are telling you. And this is what we believe. So like, we believe that parents can be successful and raise children they love, or children they like by doing this. So like developing out.
First of all,
a little bit
we
more.
believe that parents are always good, even when they make mistakes. And then I would say the same thing. We believe that children are always good, even though they make mistakes. The goodness is really important in this program.
I really like that.
We believe that healing our, I'm calling them connection wounds, but you can change that language if you'd like. We believe that healing our connection wounds is what leads us to deeper, maybe more meaningful relationships with our children. And then I think what I said before, we believe that parents are in charge, not in control.
And then we believe that parents can feel successful at the end of the day if they focus on connection with their child.
So I hope this was helpful and you got a lot of personal insight into your business by watching this sample, this real life example of message clarification. Again, there is access to the Story Supply Guide, the PDF guide down below in the description. And if you like this content, make sure again to like and subscribe, follow along on the journey, and we'll see you on a future video.